Welcome to the Mama Making Podcast, a space for moms figuring it out in real time, at home, at work, and everywhere in between. Hosted by me, Jessica Lamb, this show is here to help you feel a little less alone in the mess and magic of motherhood. Each week brings a mix of solo reflections, expert interviews, and real stories from moms leaning into themselves, whether that's into parenting, into entrepreneurship, or just surviving the day. Because there's no one way to do motherhood, and you don't have to do it alone. If that sounds like your kind of vibe, make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and keep showing up, exactly as you are. This episode of the Mama Making Podcast is sponsored by Collabs Creative. If you're a mom building a business and trying to do it without a roadmap, you're so not alone. That's exactly why I started Collabs Creative, to help founders like you tell your story, grow your brand, and actually connect with the people you're meant to serve. From social media strategy to full-on content creation, we do grassroots marketing that feels real, because it is. If you're ready to stop throwing things at the wall to see what sticks and start showing up like the founder you already are, head to collabscreative.com and let's start building something good. Now let's get on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mama Making Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. Today, I am so thrilled to have Sascha Mayer on the podcast. She is the co-founder of Mamava, the company that revolutionized lactation spaces by creating the first ever freestanding pods for pumping and breastfeeding in public. She's also the host of The Bodacious Optimist, where she continues to lead conversations about advocacy, accessibility, and equity for all parents. Today, we're going to chat more about the Mamava story, learn more about Sascha, and get to the nitty gritty of it. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, where you're from, whatever you're comfortable to share.
Sure. Well, I am the co-founder of Mamava. We're a company that's based in Burlington, Vermont, and dedicated to creating infrastructure and support for breastfeeding. And it really came about from my own experience. Now, this is, 20 years ago. I have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, which I can't believe. But I loved my job. I worked in the design field, and I was often traveling to see my clients. And when I returned to work after having my kids, I really knew about the value of breastfeeding, both for my health and for my kids, and I wanted to continue. And when I was traveling, I always had that undignified experience back then of needing a place to use my breast pump that wasn't designed for breast pumping. Essentially, you want privacy for that. And really, the only space at the time was really restrooms. So my co-founder and I were able to actually incubate the idea at the design studio where we worked. And in 2013, we put our first pod into our local airport. And the rest is sort of history, a success story, 10 years in the making. So it was really another 2 years after the first pod was placed that we actually hired our first employees and, built that business plan. But now about 10 years later, we have pods all around the country. We have a mobile app that helps moms find and access our pods. It does a few other cool things in the feature set, which I'm happy to talk about. But, I'm an entrepreneur and actually just more reluctantly, I wanted to really solve a problem. And that's Mamava, and stands for Moms on the Go.
I love that. That's the perfect pivot point in that there was a problem you wanted to solve. What did it look like for you in terms you were saying that you were a traveling mom and the first pod was in an airport. What were some of the challenges that you were seeing for lactating moms that you were like, we got to fix this?
Yeah, it was so interesting because breastfeeding is so fundamental to the human experience. And I worked in the design field, and there was so little design for this fundamentally human thing. And it struck me, and of course, the world is often designed or in the past, and it's changing, but by men and through that male lens. The idea of bringing visibility to this thing but also making it private was one of those opportunities with what the brand was all about and what the product was all about. And my experience was that I had kind of had this challenge, but I saw more and more others who also had the challenge. And I would go to, a meeting in California and there'd be 30 people and two other women would be also looking for a place to pump. Right? And sometimes there would be, like, lactation rooms in these big corporate settings, but then didn't know how to find them. I didn't know how to ask if it wasn't my own, office building and if I wasn't back at my building where I had my own private office. So it was sort of undeniable, and then, as my younger colleagues had kids, as my sister had kids, she had kids about 10 years after I did, it still wasn't solved, and that was the thing that kept Christine and myself going to, like, solve the problem is, like, I guess if no one else is gonna solve this, we're gonna have to do it,
Yeah,
and
I
it was
guess
very
it'll be us.
motivating to have that most. Yeah, exactly. I like to say, "We are the ones we've been waiting for."
Yeah, yeah, and I love the mentality of, like, if it's not gonna get fixed, then let's do it ourselves. I would love to know what that process was of for those who haven't seen, I'm sure everybody has seen them now, but the pods, they're just this, like, beautiful little orb that just has so much privacy, and then if you've been inside of them, you know that a woman has designed it or been part of the designing. I would love to know more about what that process looks like in terms of, like, "Okay, we gotta fix this," and then how it came to fruition.
Sure. So it once again, we went back to the mom. So we knew we wanted something portable and that would be easy for these facilities to adopt and make sense for them to put in their spaces. But we needed to start with the moms, and we literally had focus groups. So we invited the moms we knew to tell us what they would want in a space like this. And a key factor was actually cleanliness. So the design about more than anything else, more than security or other factors was like make it designed more like a kitchen than a phone booth pod or definitely more than a restroom, which I think was really interesting and kind of laddered up to all the things that were important to them. Obviously they need a place to sit down and be comfortable, to plug in their breast pump or have the right elbow room if they are nursing, because the pods are used for both eventually. And then for us, we really wanted also to have the space feel peaceful, and that curved architecture creates volume where there sometimes isn't. And the physiology of breastfeeding or pumping is both physical and mental. You can't have successful let down if your headspace is or if you're feeling stressed. So that was really deliberate, and we worked actually with an outside designer who took our brief and had really great experience with creating kiosks in like malls and so on, and kind of married the practicality of a freestanding pod that was easy to install and move around with what the moms needed as far as like sort of an elegant and peaceful environment.
I love that. So you mentioned utilizing other designers to kind of create what the first original one looked like. How has that kind of evolved into 2025?
Yeah, good question. We had because we were the originator of the whole concept, we had to introduce the world to it. And so the fact that it was curved and it stood out, and we have this logo which we call the Happy Breast logo. If you've seen it, you'll know what I mean. We wanted to start a conversation with the world. So that was kind of a heavy lift to say like, wait, what is this? What's it for? Why do we need it? And but it has evolved since then. And now, 10 years on, people understand the need for lactation rooms. They understand our brand. Hopefully, they've seen us because we are in these high traffic places like stadiums and airports. But more people recognize the need for these in more spaces. So our product has evolved, frankly, to fit into more places. Like we have a smaller unit. It is more shaped like a box. We actually have 3 units total because it's easier to fit a rectangular or a phone booth sized unit into multiple environments, because actually there are only so many airports and stadiums, and the world is filled with office spaces and manufacturing and warehouse facilities that also need these. And we needed to make that a more efficient product to actually deliver these units too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think being able to see the need of where these pods should be going is incredible foresight in knowing what's next. My next question was, you guys started in an airport. How did you determine where these were needed and where are they now?
Yeah. So the airports, because that was our own pain point, but we actually like had a vision board of where we would want to see our products. And at the time, the JFK JetBlue terminal was like the premier designed, had all the best retail, had great places to eat. And we basically just found the person there that would say yes eventually to putting a pod. And it's a long story short, but we got a sponsor, seventh generation, to pay for the pods because we didn't have funding yet. We were trying to figure out what the business model was. And then so that JetBlue terminal didn't have to spend anything on it. We could do a proof of concept with like a pilot unit. And then when we were in the space that was like on our vision board, other places included like the Museum of Modern Art. They were literally on our vision board for like where we would love to see this object. And eventually, that was a few years later, we did put a unit there. And that was also deliberate because we knew that airports and public places, there's a lot of volume of traffic and visibility. And so it solved that first problem that we had, but also it became this advertising vehicle and pollinator for the idea. And it was almost like a little bit of an uh-oh, what did we start here? Because people would see us and say, like, we want it for our, pizza factory. We need it for our zoo. We need it for, and then our healthcare. And all of those different channels took something different from how they purchase, what their budget cycles were, who is the facility person who is going to help facilitate this into an environment. So mission wise, we are always, and also business wise, we wanted to say yes to everything, but it was complicated very quickly after people saw us in these public environments. Good
Yeah.
problem to have. So the learning curve was steep.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about the app, how you guys decided to start the app, what that process looked like, and then how people can use it today.
Great. Yeah. So the app was kind of twofold. In the beginning, like with any business, we started just like selling, couple a month. And then we had, 30 pods out there. And it was important for us to show scale and also be useful to mom. And the app was our way of doing that. So in the beginning, and now we still do this to a degree, but I literally hired a intern who would scrape the internet for public lactation rooms. And then we put a rudimentary database together and put a map app together. So it not only had our public pods, but it had whatever it was in the beginning, like 1,200 other lactation rooms. So all of a sudden, it was much more useful to help mom find not just our public pods, but all the other lactation rooms that we have found. And since then, it has evolved to realizing we wanted to have a little bit more security on the pods in public places. So there's a smart lock on many of our public pods, and the app enables you to find and open the pods. It's totally free. It just creates a little bit of friction in those high traffic places where, somebody might be like, oh, I'm going to go charge my phone in there, even if they're not a breastfeeding parent. And so that was key. We have the ability in some of our pods, it connects with an IoT feature where you can control the lights, as an example. And in December, we are launching a virtual lactation consulting feature with a partner, Simply Fed. So like a mom, whether she's in a pod or just, navigating a breastfeeding or pumping issue, she can use her insurance to click through and get a scheduled virtual lactation consultancy, which we're really, really excited about. So again, expanding the mission, and the pods are kind of like a portal to all the things around support for breastfeeding, but not the only thing. And we have, I think, around 10 locations, mostly US and Canada, on the app for moms to find.
That's so incredible. I found the app because I was a breastfeeding mom at one point, and it was so great to see that not only could you find the pod you were looking for, you could also find other lactation areas, like family nursing rooms, which was so amazing because it's not only helping the breastfeeding mom, but also any mom who like is breastfeeding but also needs to change a toddler. It's like all encompassing, not just for that one group.
Right, and those environments are really hectic, and even if, it's just you're just literally feeding a child and not breastfeeding, we are totally okay with that because sometimes it's a baby that is, distracted and just needs a little bit of a more peaceful environment to settle into to be fed. So, moms have been key because after that initial scraping of the internet for public lactation rooms, we really relied on moms on the app to tell us where lactation rooms are. So you can suggest a space, drop a pin, and then we'll make sure it's vetted and take a picture. You can take a picture, and then that shows up on the app. So the crowdsourcing and the power of mom has actually helped build the app itself.
That's so amazing. It's so like mom fueled by whether it's the photo of the location, or I'm sure you guys receive so much feedback on people's experiences. What are some of the things that have stood out to you in terms of feedback and experiences from moms or families?
Well, one that actually became a feature of the app is we had a mom who had some horrible layover in an airport and left a note to the next mom in the pod. And that was a beautiful message, like a words of support. So we were like, we had also seen in like lactation and rooms that moms would have sometimes diaries that they or journals they'd leave messages or sticky notes. So we actually printed up a bunch of like words of support, sticky notes, and started leaving them in our pods. And then that took off to a degree where we're like, okay, this could be a fire hazard. So what we did was put the feature in the app called words of support. So if you're in the app, you can actually leave a message for other moms who are going through this because it can be really isolating, right? Especially if you're a pumping mom and you're going back to work for the first time or on a work trip, you're sort of feeling really distant from your family and like questioning maybe your pumping journey, is this worth it? And so when you have the other moms kind of weighing in and cheering you on, it's great. What also happens as an entrepreneur that's been so amazing for us is those words of support sometimes turn back to Mamava and they're like, thank you for starting this business. This pod saved my life. And it's like, being a business person in this era is not always easy. So that has kept us going too, to hear from moms directly about how much we've helped them.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know the pods have been a lifesaver for me when I was a breastfeeding mom. I specifically remember my sister and I both had infants at the same time, and we did this big family trip to the zoo. We live in Chicago, and we go to Brookfield Zoo, and I'm like, I knew about the pods, and I'm like, I'll download the app, let me map out, like, we mapped our whole zoo, like, tour based on what our feeding times were in comparison to where the 3 pods at the zoo were, and it was just such a, like, cool connection point for both my sister and I, but then for me as a breastfeeding mom, I was so, like, anxious and nervous and didn't really have a flow yet of, "Okay, I need to breastfeed at this time, which means I need to walk over to this bathroom or area at this time," and so it was so overwhelming for me that feeding portion of the first couple months, just getting, like, the logistics together, that having a pod where you, like, know that you can just go, decompress, do your feeding, whether it's feeding or pumping, is such, incredible part of that period, which I remember fondly now looking back, whether it's at the zoo or at the airport, like, having somewhere where you can just sit in a beautiful pod, and, like, at the zoo, they have on the inside, there's like whatever animal exhibit you're in, it'll have some pictures. And so it's just nice to sit and like decompress, get yourself back together, feed your baby in whatever way that looks. And I'm sure you get feedback like that all the time.
Yeah, no, but it's so gratifying to hear it. And yeah, especially those first time parents, that's everything is new and scary. You want to make sure doing the right thing. And then I know it's those parents who it's like their second, third, fourth kid are like, I just
Yeah.
needed it to contain the toddlers from jumping
Yeah.
into the,
Yeah.
the bear
Yeah.
cage or whatever it
Yep.
is. And because you get to be well practiced at that. But I'm happy that it was helpful.
Yeah, and I'm sure it gives moms so much more confidence to be breastfeeding in public. It's a private space, but it's still public, and I feel like it starts to get new moms more comfortable with being in a public space and doing this very natural thing.
Yeah, I hope so. For us, it's as I said, it's like we want to start a conversation around it so that people understand like it's happening all around you. It might be hidden. Somebody might be in the toilet using their breast pump, but it's happening all around you. Hopefully, it's for those folks who haven't started their family yet and say like, "Oh, the world is out there. It's realistic for me to wanna at least try to breastfeed." We are all for, obviously, breastfeeding in public, pumping in public, do whatever, but, like, there's many, many ways to approach this and many comfort levels. So, we like that it stands out, starts a conversation. It might be somebody who isn't a parent yet who, like, is seeing it and saying, "Oh, the world's gonna be, like, a welcoming place. There's a place for me." To like try to do this thing, which can be really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great place to talk about the advocacy that the company does. It's not just making pods for moms to feel comfortable to breastfeed. You guys are doing so much advocacy work for moms and lactation and postpartum support. I would love to hear how you kind of rooted your business in this space of advocacy and support for families.
Yeah, well, it absolutely makes sense. And I guess it maybe should go without saying that the reason that we think breastfeeding is so important is because the data shows that it is a very straightforward intervention that is important for both maternal health outcomes and infant and child health. I think there's new interesting for people who don't know that for maternal health, actually, they're seeing more and more of a benefit if you're a breastfeeding mom for you versus even for the child's outcomes. There's, shown reduction in like heart disease, diabetes, recovery rates for after you have the baby, like uterine recovery rates. And there's new, I thought, really interesting research around how they're showing that T cells, the cells that attack cancerous or abnormal cells in mom's breast tissue 10 years after she's breastfed are still there. So they're showing and suggesting, this came out in the journal Nature recently, that actually reduction in breast cancers has to do with these cells that actually appear when you're breastfeeding, but they stick around for like 10 years later, which I thought
Wow.
was really interesting new data. Yeah. And then, of course, for infants, for gastrointestinal, for immunity, for very, very important for neonatal care. One of the things, so it just makes sense. So, like, we're mission based and we do it for a reason. It's because many, many people believe and the proof is out there that breastfeeding is the best, but it's a horrible feeling to feel like, oh, I know it's the best thing for me and my baby, but there's no way I can do it because my employer doesn't support me or there's no infrastructure and I need to be out in the world. So it's all baked into there. It's like very self-serving to our mission that we're doing it. I did want to mention that in our app, we have right now we're promoting Himbana, which is the nonprofit that is dedicated to human milk banking. So we have the ability in the app, if you're somebody who is a big producer of milk, or maybe you're coming to the end of your breastfeeding and you feel like you want to continue to pump and donate that milk, Himbana is a great organization. They can connect you with milk banks throughout the country. I think there's like 8 nonprofit milk banks that are associated with Himbana. It is such an important intervention for premature infants for their health and frankly survival rates. So I feel really proud that we can kind of build in just because of the infrastructure we have and the app itself to like make those connections to the amazing moms who have extra milk and are willing to donate it for those reasons.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll put that in the show notes for people to be able to follow
Great.
along as well. So, what are some of the other barriers that you're seeing in terms of a corporate setting or public spaces when it comes to lactation support?
I think that we are seeing that many women are leaving the workforce. and kind of that sacrifice of like, this is too difficult. And they might be actually choosing to breastfeed and thus leaving the workforce because they're just not seeing themselves in this phase of their life being well supported there. And again, we're really pushing against that. What, as I mentioned before, has been really gratifying for us is the places that we didn't expect to be serving, like military bases, right? We have pods there in these sort of more male, what you think of as male dominated spaces, factory settings, right? Again, trying to build more equity, and that has to do with visibility, engagement from employees. If they're feeling taken care of, and they're going to stay, and it's much better for a business to retain an employee than to go out and have to find another one, perhaps after they start a family. So these are the things that are important to us and that are important to the customers that are placing our pods.
Yeah. In that same vein, how can, in your opinion, employers better support parents during that postpartum period?
Well, it's key that should happen beforehand. So having a very clear and front-footed lactation policy, and we actually help our accounts with that. We're super happy to share what we think are best practices there. Having it be like in your employee manual. So again, before you even think about having kids, you're like, oh, this is a company who's thought of this, and I'm not going to have to be negotiating this with my manager. I think those are really key, and having a highly visible lactation room or a Mamava pod there. So again, it's not something that they have to feel like they have to navigate. You're making a million decisions, from finding child care to what your life is going to be like as a parent. So to ease that by being very front footed as an organization, like, oh yeah, it's like breastfeeding is something that's well supported here, and here are all the ways, and being really, really vocal and front footed about that. And I think again, it's like that doesn't even have to be gendered when male partners see that, then it's like part of educating them too. So if they have kids, or if they're going to have kids, they know what the best practices are. Yeah, so the app sometimes is downloaded by like what I call like the bosom buddies, or like they're the wing men or women who might be traveling with a breastfeeding parent. Like I have it because it's obviously our business, but when I'm traveling with some of my colleagues who are breastfeeding, I'm actually running interference. I'm like, okay, when we stop here, we're going to find the pod there, so you can use it, and we're going to take it. You know what I mean? So, and that's definitely something that I know was alienating when I had my kids, and I was very open about the fact I wanted to breastfeed, and I'm the kind of person who does not apologize for that. But I'd be like, okay, we're done with this business meeting. I'm going into the restroom, and I'll see you, in 20 minutes. And, my colleagues would be waiting in the lobby of the business we were pitching, and they'd be like, twiddling their thumbs, and I'd be like, sorry, that's the way it's going to be. But if I had, and they were really supportive, but if I think that, the app is sort of that toolkit, one of your many tools that you might need as a breastfeeding parent. And it's often a dad who might be like, okay, the mom is breastfeeding, or the non-breastfeeding partner, and like, I'm gonna go and find the space, and I'm gonna open it, and I'm gonna, so.
Yeah. I want to go back to the point that you made that the support starts prior to that person having a baby, or prior to your employees starting families. And I think that that could not be a truer statement. One of the things that I know, like I know my friends look for in jobs, is looking at that employee manual to be like, what is the maternity leave? What is my insurance benefits? And then what do the rules look like when it comes to returning to work, lactating, time off, things like that. And so I think you're absolutely right. Having your best foot forward in that area as an employer to think ahead on those things, I think can get you, one, top talent, but two, retain that talent as well, because they know that they're going to be supported during that time. And I think that that is key to being able to support people prior to that life stage, even getting there.
Absolutely. And it's the law. So I should mention that too. So it's been 10 years since we had the company, and part of that was the Affordable Care Act was the first piece of legislation that mandated like break time for hourly wage employees. And then in 2022, the Pump Act was signed into law, which had way more teeth to actually mandate that all employees, including exempt employees, those folks who are like teachers and people who are paid salaries, had the break time and a space that was not a bathroom to use their breast pumps. So that should compel businesses as well, because it is the law actually to have a lactation policy and a space that is not a bathroom that they need to be providing. And by the way, if you're interested in any of this, our website, back to your question about advocacy, we take that really seriously. Our website has all of that information, and if you need to take it to your employer, it's a really good resource for advocating because it is a law.
Yeah. Yeah. And that dovetails perfectly into my next question of what role does policy and legislation play in Mamava and the work that you all do?
So we wouldn't be here without it, sadly. You'd think that the world would want to do the right thing. But as I said, when this idea first came up, there was no protection under the law. And it's also, as far as a business, it's pretty capital heavy investment to be developing a big, structured thing that we needed to pay for. So we needed to raise money. And the legislation gave us the business case to go to investors and say, hey, this is coming and people are going to have to solve this problem now and we are here for it. So good policy in this case led to good business. We are, as I said, we are based in Burlington, Vermont. We actually manufacture in a facility a couple hours away that we own. We employ 65 people in the US. So we're an example of like good for business, good for health, and all stemming really or compelled by good public policy.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's a perfect example of it can be done when things are handed down like this. It's it's positive for everyone and it just shows that it can be done.
Yes, and your very excellent senator from where you're from, Tammy Duckworth, has been a huge advocate in particular. Well, she's been a breastfeeding parent twice, and she's been
Yep.
in Congress and in the Senate. And she also has passed some of the legislation that was specific to airports. So the policy is really an employer policy, and there is not as much around public facilities where folks who might be coming into like an airport. That is thanks to Senator Tammy Duckworth. We're very grateful for her. Other legislation that requires on a federal level more of those public spaces for lactation would be courthouses. But beyond that, it's really an employer-employee mandate versus a customer care.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I could talk legislation stuff all day, but I would love to learn more about your entrepreneur journey and motherhood. What did everything look like? You said that you started how many years ago?
So my kids are 19 and 22, and the business really started in 2015. We hired our first employee 10
Okay.
years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were in the thick of motherhood while you were building this incredible business. What did this all look like? What did balance look like for you? If that's even a thing. How did it all look?
Well, I think it was really interesting. Like there was sort of a define the early stage of parenthood really fell to me. I have a wonderful husband who is a teacher. So he is a very nice complement to my businessy self. And but the my body was sustaining the kids. So in those early days, obviously the breastfeeding, the feeding, and frankly the feeding of the family because of I like to cook and the food was on me. But then when the kids went to kindergarten, they were in his school district. It was sort of like a passing of the baton. And it was also during the time that I was trying to like get this business off the ground. So having that partnership and thinking about those life phases of the kind of physical care that a young child needs, and then later it evolves to something it's more that still physical, but like that emotional care, the practical, the coaching, the just being there when they get off the bus. So that really enabled me to be like full on entrepreneur, traveling a lot. And I think sometimes people talk about parenting or running households as like 50-50, and in my experience, it's really like sometimes it's 80 for one person and 20 for the other, but you got to strike that balance, and that's kind of how we did it. It was sort of like the young years, and then in the older years, my husband took on most of the burden of that, and he's also as a teacher, right, he had the summers off, he had the vacations off, so he was scheduling and taking the kids to camp or what have you, and you know, the world needs more flexibility, right? Like, I got lucky, but that was my experience, is just that balance we struck in the household was kind of natural to our career paths.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying falls in line perfectly with the idea that you just kind of have to ebb and flow with where your life stage is. And that's something that I'm learning in my entrepreneurial journey is that, like, with young kids, every couple weeks is different. So much is changing. That same thing, like, as you continue to move into business and growing and, same with your family. If you're adding to your family or you're choosing to stop and you're going into a whole new life phase, it all kind of, if you're willing to lean into it, you can adjust and sometimes have to adjust to where your life phase is.
Absolutely, and there was a little bit of irony when things were really, really crazy when we are getting Mamava off the ground, and that the baby became my business, or the business was my baby, and the kids were kind of, like, more, under the, care of my husband, Aaron, so that was ironic, and there's actually I'm not gonna lie, there's been sometimes some tension when I actually use that, like, "Mamava's my baby," and then my babies would be like, "What about us?" Even though the 11, 12, 13 years old. Yeah. They get it, though. I think that kids wanna see their parents happy and fulfilled and driven by a mission, and, I think that has been really informative for them. I don't know if they're gonna be entrepreneurial, but I have to believe that they have also benefited from seeing, like, kind of the grit that it takes to create something. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think happy parents is a great point to make that whatever that looks like, maybe it's you're staying home or you're off traveling working. And I think seeing different dynamics, every family is gonna look different. So I think leaning into what makes you happy and what serves your family best is key.
Totally.
So, what are some of the things that you've taken from motherhood into the business world in terms of your leadership journey? How you kind of create a team, how you build and scale your business, your company? How has motherhood and what you've learned from motherhood kind of integrated there?
Well, one mantra is progress over perfection, which I think applies very well to parenting too. Take that one pretty seriously and being iterative in what we're creating. And um, I think that transparency is actually a pretty good value or approach with kids. Like, kids understand a lot. You don't want to like share everything with them, but connect the dots for them and they will come along with you. And as we run this business, we do run it with a lot of transparency. And with that, it feels like you're on the same team and there's no surprises. It builds trust. And you also, as I said, like, you can connect the dots as an employee, like, "Oh, I understand because I have all of this information about the company, about why this decision was made. I may not agree with it, but I've been along for the ride." And I think that's really, really key. I think another one that it's maybe not what you'd expect is, like, a business isn't a family, because a family is with you no matter what. Right? And, very deliberately, we've always talked about the business as like being a team, and teams need different things. They might need a new coach, they might need a new quarterback. And I think that sometimes perhaps, I don't know, but like in women run organizations, they can like slip down that slope of like, oh, it's a family and, things will never change. And no, I think that language is important. And that's a piece of language that we've really deliberately used, team over family. We do say that our business is matriarchal, though, which is, about nurturing our colleagues, about getting our colleagues ready to like evolve and, maybe even leave the nest if that's where they're going to be fulfilled, versus like patriarchal and top down and dictating where things go. So, progress over perfection. You guys, we're a team and like leading with a matriarchal perspective, which is not coddling. It's about like, a good mom raises, strong kids.
I love everything that you're saying because I think there tends to be this like misconception or idea that women in leadership, women are so emotional and have a hard time creating boundaries and whatever is out there. But I think this is a great example of you can lead with that motherhood instinct or maternal instinct while still operating a business effectively.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it takes a lot of grit to be an entrepreneur to bring a new concept to market. There's nurturing, but there's not coddling. And you can, my colleagues tease me because I'm always like, there's no crying in baseball. you know, and I think that's maybe the wrong thing to say because I think emotions are fine to have in the workplace, but definitely in terms of my style, there is no crying in baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think if my mom was a woman leader, I think she would be the same as well. Your feelings are valid, but don't have them right now.
Yeah.
So, what are some pieces of advice that you would give to women who are kind of women founders tackling a mission-driven company or business?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before. It's like this idea of like we are the ones we've been waiting for. So acting on those ideas. I believe there's a tendency for all entrepreneurs, maybe not just women, to want to keep their idea secret or until it's totally perfected. And the best thing you can do is like go out in the world with your idea, get feedback, iterate on that because it's going to make you stronger. And if it's something that is easily stolen, then it wasn't that great of an idea in the first place, right? So that I would say like don't wait for perfection again. Share the idea, build that network of advisors because those are the people that are going to connect you to the next person, your first key salesperson, the key person who might help you with a manufacturing challenge. I think those are the key things is just like getting the idea out there as soon as possible and taking those first steps and being willing to be iterative or progressive or perfection. You don't have to have it all figured out. A lot of folks are like cobbling things together and to
Yeah.
test the idea. Like in our case, we literally had one pod. We had a relationship with our local airport. We had a contract that literally was $1. We are gonna buy this pod for $1 just so we could persuade them, and we had a press conference, and the local paper came. It was owned by Gannett, which owned USA Today, and it went into every USA Today all across the country, even though we really didn't even have a business. We had, like, a rudimentary
Wow.
website and a phone number, and it was in a big spread in USA Today. And we weren't really ready, but you're never really ready. And we learned so much from that first step. And it was 2 years later that we actually really started the business.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, just like deciding to have your first or multiple kids, you're never really when is the perfect time?
Right.
That's a perfect parallel.
Yes.
So, do you want to chat a little bit about the podcast?
Sure. I mean, the podcast is just a really fun way for me to feature people I love. And we have a very dynamic entrepreneurial community both in Vermont. And then I've met a bunch of people through this business. So our first season was focused on other entrepreneurs. We had Olympic athletes. We have Elisa Montano is one of those. She's a founder of a organization that helps get pay equity for professional athletes. She would be an example. We have Claire Coder. She is the founder of Ant Flow. That Ant Flow is a organization that gets free period products in public facilities everywhere from airports to schools. Love those two entrepreneurs are amazing. And then our most recent season has been dedicated to breastfeeding. So anything you want to know about breastfeeding, from the economics of breastfeeding to the health factors surrounding breastfeeding. Angela Lang is a physician who works for Medela, and she was one of my favorite guests because it was just so informative about the importance and the sort of the practical sides of breastfeeding. So if you are a breastfeeding parent and you want like the down and dirty of all the things that you might want to know, I thought hers was really reassuring and had a lot of great practical advice. So Angela Lang, and the podcast is called The Bodacious Optimist, and we do it on and off when we have time. It's a good way to get the brand out there, but really it's more of a pet project for me to celebrate the things and the people that I like in the world.
Yeah, and you've had such diverse voices on the podcast, which I have loved tuning into to people of so many different industries, so many different backgrounds, and they're truly experts in what it is that they're doing. So being able to hear um, kind of the inside baseball of what they have going on or what their industry is really cool.
Yeah, my dream is to be on How You Built This. So I thought, well, I'm gonna like make other my own version of it and show like how I would share other people's stories. So maybe a producer at How I Built This will hear this and ask us on.
That's amazing. So tell me lastly about the Designing Motherhood exhibit at the Museum of Art and Design.
Yes. So we have a pilot unit, which is a breastfeeding bench. So you'd think that would be sort of fundamental and would have already existed. But again, to expand our mission around infrastructure and visibility to the act of breastfeeding, we designed a bench is much easier for folks to fit them into their facilities. And one of the places that we have struggled the most with getting lactation infrastructure into has been retail. And so we thought, well, retailers love to have video screens on things and they have trouble finding good places to mount screens. So what we decided to do is create a bench that has a retail kind of media network screen. So you could place it at a Target, at a Walmart, at an HEB and run the promos for the store on the screen. So it kind of solves a couple problems. It's infrastructure for the store to have these screens mounted, and there's no audio, so it's not disruptive to the mom and the baby. And it also has this beautiful place to sit down, take a load off. And we just now are getting it out into the world. And the first place is not a retailer. It's at the Museum of Arts and Design in New York. And between now and March, it's both on display and for use. So you can go to that exhibit. It's called the Designing Motherhood exhibit, which is a traveling exhibit about motherhood design, and it includes everything from stroller design to like new baby boxes from Scandinavian countries to all sorts of things that are the objects of motherhood. And our bench is kind of premiering there, and you can actually sit on it and use it. It stands opposite a video screen of an artist who made a film who is displaying within the exhibit. So it's sort of like the bench is a display piece, it's an object, and it's also integrated so you can actually use it.
That's incredible. We'll definitely have to do some digging and find that so everyone can get a peek at what it looks like.
Yeah.
So I want to just do a really quick lightning round of questions with a few minutes left here. What is the favorite place that you guys have put a pod? Or maybe the funniest or weirdest place you might think of?
Well, my favorite is probably MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Gosh, funniest. I did think in the early days, like the Milwaukee Zoo was an early adopter, and like putting the pods in the zoo was not maybe funny, but I loved like how it was like, yeah. And they put graphics of like animal moms and babies, which
Yeah.
I just thought was really
Yeah.
great. Yeah, we can put graphics in and on our pods. So those are two favorites.
I love that. What is one word that describes leadership in motherhood?
Creative. Got to
Okay.
be
I love
creative, got to
that.
be willing to pivot. It's okay to be creative.
Yeah. And then last one is finish the sentence. Changing the culture for mothers looks like.
It looks like infrastructure. And I mean that both we need paid parental leave, we need lactation pods, we need all of those things. We need an infrastructure bill that's around care for people.
Yeah, I love that. We just, my family, on a side note, just got back from Japan. We were in Japan for a week, and there are so many things that are just built into their culture that are to support families. And at the end of the day, it's probably just for efficiency, but it works, and the families are supported, and even down to like stroller parking in the parks or whatever it might be. I think you're absolutely right that it starts with infrastructure. Well, thank you so much. Can you share where people can find you? The Mamava website, social media, and then where they can find the podcast?
Sure. The podcast is everywhere. Bodacious Optimist is the name of the podcast. The website has all of our links to social. We love to see moms on Instagram. In the business community, I'm spending a lot of time on LinkedIn. If you want to follow us there, that is a great way. And again, downloading the app if you're a mom or if you're a friend to a new mom, it can be really helpful. And we really appreciate, talking and sharing this world, like giving visibility to breastfeeding, which is sort of like a hidden and highly important thing that keeps the human race sustained.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so incredible. I am so honored to have been able to chat with you, and just thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. This was super fun.
Thank you so much. That's it for today's episode of the Mama Making Podcast. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend, leave a review, or follow us on social media. We love hearing what's landing for you. And most importantly, keep making your way through. You're never in this alone. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.